Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to crack open the user manual for the most complex, most powerful device you will ever own, your brain. We're diving deep into John Medina's fantastic book, Brain Rules, to figure out how our minds are actually supposed to work, and, more importantly, how you can start using that knowledge to your advantage, like right now.
And okay, let's just start with the single most important idea in the entire book. Because honestly, every single rule, every insight, it all flows from this one basic truth. The brain you are using this very second, it evolved for a world that looks absolutely nothing like the one you're living in today.
And that, right there, creates a massive problem, a kind of user manual mismatch between our brain's ancient wiring and our modern world. So just how big is that gap? Well, let's take a look.
Think about it. For pretty much all of human history, our brains were powered by bodies that were always on the move. We're talking walking, maybe running as much as 12 miles a day. We evolved to solve immediate, life or death problems out in the wild. And what do we do now? We force those exact same brains to sit perfectly still in a quiet, stable office for 8 hours, just staring at a screen. You see it, right? That is the fundamental conflict.
And this mismatch, it's the reason we struggle to focus. It's why our memory seems to fail us, and why, let's be honest, so many meetings feel like a special kind of torture. So it makes you wonder, right? What if we could work with our brain's design instead of constantly fighting against it? Well, that's exactly what the brain rules are for.
So where do we even begin? Well, we go right back to the start. The first solution is all about honoring our evolutionary past, and that means one really simple thing. We've got to move.
The science here is it's completely undeniable. Physical activity is basically cognitive candy for your brain. For most of history, our brains were supported by what Medina calls Olympic caliber bodies. And guess what? They still crave that movement. Thinking isn't some separate thing that just happens in your head. It is deeply, deeply connected to your body.
And just look at this gap. A lifetime of regular exercise doesn't just keep you in shape, it leads to this incredible boost in cognitive performance. The difference between exercisers and couch potatoes isn't some tiny little gap. It's a canyon. It's huge. And hey, you don't need to become an ultramarathoner to get these benefits. Get this, just walking a few times a week can literally cut your lifetime risk for diseases like dementia and Alzheimer's in half. It's like our bodies are just screaming to get back to their active Serengeti roots.
Okay, so moving is critical. We get it. But let's be real. We can't spend the entire day on a treadmill. What about those times when we have to sit down and focus? Well, that's where our next rule comes in. It's all about tackling the brain's #1 enemy, boredom.
Medina's research on this is just crystal clear. It doesn't matter how amazing of a speaker you are, you've got about 10 minutes before your audience's attention just falls off a cliff. So right around that 10-minute mark, you must do something different to hit the reset button on their focus.
And the secret to hitting that reset button? It's emotion. Remember, your brain is a survival organ. It's hardwired to pay attention to threats, to mating opportunities, and to things that are just plain weird. When something is emotionally charged, your brain releases dopamine, which is like a little chemical post-it note that screams, "Hey, remember this." Now, this whole idea of grabbing attention, it brings up a massive modern myth. We've all been told that to be more productive, we need to multitask. But your brain? Oh, it fundamentally, and I mean fundamentally, disagrees.
Okay, here's the mind-blowing truth of it all. Our brains cannot actually do two things at once. It is a biological impossibility. What we think is multitasking is really just our brain rapidly and frantically switching its focus from one task to the next. And as you can probably guess, that switch comes with a really heavy price.
Every single time you switch, from an email to a text, from a report to that little notification that just popped up, your brain has to grind through this whole 4-step process. It has to alert itself, find the rules for what you were just doing, let go of those rules, and then find the rules for the new thing. It's not happening at the same time. It's a slow, clunky, step-by-step process.
And yeah, that whole step-by-step thing is wildly inefficient. These interruptions, they aren't just a small annoyance, they are productivity killers. A person who is constantly task-switching takes 50% longer to finish something and makes 50% more mistakes while doing it. Wow.
All right, so we've learned our brains need movement to think, and they need to focus on one thing at a time. But what about the information itself? Well, it turns out our brain has an absolute favorite way of getting information, which brings us to our final rule for today.
This little experiment just completely shatters the idea that our senses all work independently.
When they were given conflicting info, one sense didn't just get a little confused, it took over completely. In this case, vision didn't just help the other senses, it totally dominated them.
And, there's a really good reason for that dominance. Vision is, by a huge margin, our most powerful sense. It takes up about half of our brain's total resources. We're not just visual creatures. We are unbelievably visual creatures. Our brain is a seeing machine, first and foremost.
And this incredible focus on vision, it gives us one of the most powerful and practical tools for learning and communication. It's called the pictorial superiority effect. And put simply, it just means if you want someone to learn and remember something, don't just tell them about it, show them a picture.
I mean, the data here is just wild. If you just hear a piece of information, 3 days later, you'll remember about 10% of it. But if you add a relevant picture to that same information, your retention just skyrockets to 65%. That's more than a 6-fold increase in how effective your communication is. It's incredible.
So why is this effect so powerful? Well, it's because reading is shockingly hard for the brain. It doesn't see a word as one thing. Nope. Instead, it has to identify every single letter as a collection of tiny little pictures, lines, curves, intersections. It's a really slow, careful process. A picture, though, your brain processes that almost instantly.
So, after all this, what's the big takeaway? It's pretty simple, actually. We can stop fighting our brain's natural tendencies and start consciously designing our lives, our work, and our learning to actually work with them.
Okay, let's boil it all down to 3 simple actions you can take away from this. First, move. Get your body moving to get your brain thinking. Second, focus. Respect that 10-minute clock, and please, ditch multitasking for good. And third, see. Whenever you can, use the incredible power of vision.
This leaves us with a pretty big thought. What if our schools were designed for movement and for exploration? What if our workplaces were designed for deep, focused work, not constant interruption? Just imagine what we could create, what problems we could solve if we built a world that was truly designed for how our brains actually thrive. That is the real promise of understanding the brain rules.
If you're finding this summary valuable, do me a quick favor and hit the like button. And if you want more wisdom from the world's best books, make sure you're subscribed.